I'm Korma and welcome. In this series, we're going to show you how to cook a wide variety of international vegetarian cuisine from over 30 countries. And in this edition, we're going to show you how to prepare a selection of Middle Eastern entrees, including Israeli chickpea croquettes, falafel, chickpea and sesame dip, hummus, and Lebanese bulgur wheat salad, tabbouleh. So, let's begin. You know, every cuisine of the world has its entrees or starters to a meal. France has its hors d'oeuvre, Spain has its tapas, Italy has its antipasto, and the Middle East is famous for its entrees, which are known as messe. They contain a wide variety of delicious vegetarian ingredients. So today, I thought we'd start by showing you a very, very famous entree, which is known as falafel. It's made of delicious chickpeas, which are made into little patties and fried, and then they're stuffed inside beautiful Middle Eastern breads and served with pickles and salads. They're delicious to make, and they're very, very simple. Let me show you the wonderful ingredients for our falafel. Starting over here, we have a batch of chickpeas that I've soaked overnight. I started off with 1 1/4 cups, and now they've swollen up to about 2 1/2. We've got half a teaspoon of yellow asafoetida powder for a nice spicy flavour. We've got 1 teaspoon of ground coriander powder, a teaspoon of ground cumin seeds, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And in the centre here, we have 3/4 cup of finely chopped parsley. This is going to be folded into our delicious falafel croquettes to give it a nice fresh flavour. So the first thing we're going to do is to drain our chickpeas over here in the sink, in our colander here, or our sieve. This is the same water that they were soaked in. When you do soak chickpeas, you have to remember, put in plenty of water. Now, we're going to dump these into our food processor. In the Middle East, these will be smashed up in a traditional large brass mortar called a madak. But since we're in our Western kitchen here, we're going to use our Western facilities. Food processor is always very important to have. There we are, that'll do it. Your chickpeas should be very finely ground for falafel, so sometimes it takes a few goes in the machine. Let's transfer our finely minced chickpeas now into our bowl. We're going to add the rest of our ingredients. I remember actually recently somebody said to me, I tried your recipe for falafel and it didn't work. And I was quite perturbed about that, so I mentioned to them, tell me all the steps you followed. And they said, yes, well, I soaked my chickpeas, then I boiled them until they were soft. And I said, there's the problem. You must never boil your chickpeas before you grind them up, otherwise you'll end up with a puree, very similar to our next recipe on the show. They should be raw and minced very fine and then deep fried. That's the secret of a good falafel. Don't ever attempt to boil them, otherwise they'll disintegrate when you fry them. So let's add our other ingredients now, starting with our parsley. In goes a lovely green parsley, gives it lovely fresh flavour. We've got our yellow asafoetida powder. This is my addition to this famous recipe. Let's add our cumin and our coriander powder. These add a very authentic, earthy flavour, which is very much characteristic of falafel. A little bit of heat is introduced by our chili powder or cayenne pepper. We've got our salt, our black pepper, and a little bit of baking powder to make our mixture nice and fluffy and light. Now let's fold everything in together. This is important now to get it all mixed as well as possible. This particular time I think I'll grab my fist here and use it for kneading purposes. This is often our best kitchen equipment. The falafel mixture at this point in time has to be well and truly squished up and well mixed. There's a wonderful aroma here from the combination of spices and those lovely flavour of the fresh chickpeas wafting up also. So what we're going to do now is to leave our falafel mix for about half an hour. That allows the baking powder to do its job, so they become nice and light and fluffy. Let's pop a lid on top and see you soon. Well, I'm back. Well, in fact, I haven't really left. Our falafel mixture's been sitting there for about half an hour, and I'm just chopping up a salad here to go with our falafel. Falafel are lovely, served with a nice, fresh, crisp salad, and they're usually stuffed inside these beautiful Middle Eastern breads. These are called commonly, anyway, pita, although that's the Greek word, and the Middle Eastern word is kubis or kubs. Either way, you can buy pita breads at any nice delicatessen or grocery shop. What we do for our Middle Eastern breads, when we're making falafel, we take a few like this, put them in a stack, and we cut off the top, like so. Then all the breads can be opened up. They form a beautiful little pouch, like so. Inside these little pouches, we stuff our falafel, along with a nice salad and different types of pickles, and a beautiful type of sesame dip called hummus. I'm going to show you how to make that next. But before we go on to that, let's get our falafel underway. These have been sitting there, as I said, maturing somewhat in our nice warm kitchen. Now let's pinch off a piece of mixture and squeeze it in my palms like this. There we go. We're going to continue rolling our mixture here. There's a number of different things you can add to your falafel mixture. Sometimes I've tasted falafel that has cracked wheat or bulgur in it. Sometimes yeast is used instead of baking powder. There's quite a lot of variation, and you can try making them out of white beans. You can buy those the same place as you buy your chickpeas, Middle Eastern grocery shops. Well, here it is, falafel number 16. It's very important to note when you're rolling these out to make sure they're nice and firmly compact, then they'll fry nicely. It always amazes me though, they look so fragile, yet they don't disintegrate in the ghee at all. They're quite sturdy little fellows. And that brings me to my next point about the ghee. Ghee is clarified butter. It's very common to find ghee homemade in Middle Eastern countries, especially Lebanon, Syria and Jordan, where it's very well loved. It's known as samana or samane, depending on where you're from. Falafel cooked in ghee have a lovely flavour. If you can't get a hold of ghee, you could try making your own, or alternatively, you can use your favourite cooking oil. So this ghee now is 180 degrees Celsius, 355 degrees Fahrenheit. I can tell because I just put my cooking thermometer in while you were away. So I'm going to pop my falafel in there. I'm going to try putting them all in. Don't throw them in so they splash everywhere, but roll them down the sides of your cooking vessel or lower them in as carefully as you can. Important thing to note at this point in time, even though they look like they might be breaking up, which indeed they're not, is to not touch them at all. Let them rise to the surface before you attempt to move them around, because this is a stage where they could break up if you give them too much pressure. So what I like to do at this point in time is to roll all my falafel in as quick as I can, like so. 15, 16. Pick up my spoon, but don't stick it in until I see my first falafel float to the surface. Here he comes now. Oh, he's a little shy. He's popped back in. All right, here's another one. See, it's gone nice and golden on the outside. Now we can gently move them around. Now they've got that little crispy coating on the outside. They can be gently moved around. But I wouldn't move them too much because they do sink to the bottom. These require about 5 or 6 minutes now until they become quite a dark golden brown. Well, here's our wonderful batch of golden falafel. Nice golden brown. This is the stage when we're going to remove them from our lovely fragrant ghee here. Such a lovely fragrance of falafel cooking in ghee. Remarkable. I hope you do try making these. So here's our lovely 16 falafel. And of course, as I said before, a batch of falafel go beautifully with nice pita breads and a salad, and not only that, but some sort of dip or sauce to go with them. I suggest a succulent sesame and chickpea dip. In fact, we're going to show you how to make that next up. A beautiful serving suggestion with golden Israeli chickpea croquettes, falafel. I'm going to show you now how to make a wonderful chickpea and sesame dip called hummus, or in local language, hummus bi tahina. But I found you have to be careful how you pronounce that word, hummus. It's not actually pronounced hummus, it's hummus. There's a subtle difference there. I once went into a Lebanese shop and asked for hummus, and the man laughed very broadly and brought out his rather large wife, and he explained to me in between laughs that the way I said it meant I wanted a big fat lady. So be careful when you ask for hummus, or should I say hummus. Let's have a look at the wonderful ingredients here for hummus. It's basically made of chickpeas and sesame seeds. Sesame seeds themselves are these beautiful little flat pear-shaped seeds that have been a staple crop in the Middle East for thousands and thousands of years. They contain over 50% oil, and they're very, very beautiful when crushed up into a lovely puree here. This is called tahina. This is the Lebanese writing here, but if you turn it over you can see Lebanese tahine. Sometimes it's pronounced tahini or tahine or tahina. Either way, I'll show you what's inside this lovely jar here. It's a beautiful paste made from sesame seeds. I'll pour some out here. It's like thin, runny peanut butter, but it has not a peanutty taste, but a beautiful, rich sesame flavour. So this, combined with our chickpeas, is the basis of today's hummus tahina. And of course, these are chickpeas. You've probably seen these before. Chickpeas have been cultivated for also thousands and thousands of years. In Spanish cuisine, they're known as garbanzos, and in Italy, they're known as sesi. They're very, very well loved all over the world. They're actually rich in protein. 100 grams of cooked chickpeas contain 20 grams of protein. That's 1/5 protein by weight. And they provide nearly double the amount of iron than most other legumes. So these two things combined together, the chickpeas and the sesame seeds, are going to be done in a very, very delicious way. As far as the fat lady is concerned, I could appreciate becoming very, very fat eating hummus because it is so delicious. It's one of those things you just can't eat enough of. It's supposed to last 2 or 3 days in the refrigerator, but it never gets to the refrigerator. Let's have a look at the ingredients here for my batch of hummus tahina. We're starting off with some chickpeas actually. These have been soaked last night. I started off with 1.5 cups of chickpeas, and they've now swollen up and they're sitting here in the water that I soaked them in. Over here on the platter, we've got the juice of 2 large juicy lemons, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of yellow asafoetida powder. This is my version of hummus. We've got 2 tablespoons of olive oil. This is going to be used for garnish on top of our hummus tahina. We've got 1/4 teaspoon of paprika, also for garnish, and also on top of that, we've got 1 teaspoon of chopped fresh parsley. And last but not least, we've got 2/3 cup of tahina or tahini, beautiful sesame paste. So let's get this recipe on the road here, shall we? Here's our chickpeas that have been soaking overnight. Let's take them over to the sink and drain them. Drain off all that soaking water. Pop them back into our bowl here. Fill them up with more water. Like so. Let's bring them over to our stove. Here we have an empty pot. We're going to pour the whole lot into our empty pot. Turn on the flame, like so. Bring these to the boil, and we're going to cook them for about an hour until they're nice and butter soft. But don't worry, I've got a big pot here that I've already cooked, so you won't have to hang around and wait for me. This pot I cooked just a couple of hours ago. See how nice and butter soft they are? You can squeeze them between your fingers to a soft paste. That's the ideal consistency for this dish. Let's take these over to the sink and drain them. There you go. Right, let that sit in the pot while it drains. Now, this whole preparation can be done in a food processor. This food processor, once again, is going to be used. Of course, you could also use the typical Middle Eastern mortar and pestle, but these things are very practical, our little machinery. Let's put our chickpeas in there, like so. And along with that, we're going to add our sesame paste, like so. Such a beautiful, rich, earthy flavour, this tahini. It's definitely one of my favourite foods. We've got our lemon juice. We've got our salt. Our asafoetida. That's it. Pop our lid on. Give it a buzz. So I'm going to add a little water to this. Sometimes a little bit of water is needed to bring it to the right consistency, because tahina sometimes makes chickpeas go very, very thick. This hummus actually should have the consistency of a light sort of mayonnaise. there it is. It's looking divine. Let's take it over here. Pop it in our bowl, shall we? Remove our blade. In we go. Let's help it along with our spatula here. Such a divine fragrance. Well, there is a beautiful batch of hummus. Let's take you on a guided tour now of the hummus, falafel, pita bread combination. I'm going to grab a few bowls and plates and get this all assembled here now. We need our olive oil and our parsley and our paprika. The rest of the stuff can move over here. Now, the olive oil and the paprika and the parsley are going to be sprinkled on top of your little individual batch of hummus when you serve it. There's enough hummus here for a few servings, although like I said before, this probably won't last the day because it's so delicious. Take a nice spoonful of hummus. Actually, let's place it in the middle here of our plate. Let's pour on a little bit of olive oil, nice virgin olive oil. Sprinkle of parsley. A sprinkle of paprika. If you like, you can use cayenne. Let's grab our salad from the fridge. And our falafel that have been patiently sitting over here. Open up one of our lovely pita breads. Pop our falafel inside, 2 nice falafel. And a generous serving of salad, as much as you can stuff inside. A couple of cucumbers, like so. It's a real as-you-please type of dish. You can just really stuff it in as you like. A bit more salad in here. Let's pop it over here. Here's our beautiful pita bread filled with falafel and salad. Well, don't mind me, but I'm going to continue making a few of these lovely little things for our Middle Eastern entrees. And there you are, a large batch or a small batch. Either way, a beautiful combination. Pita breads stuffed with golden, crispy, crunchy falafel, beautiful cool salad, and a creamy bowl of delicious sesame and chickpea dip hummus. Stand back and wait for the rush. You know, a selection of Middle Eastern entrees wouldn't be the same without tabbouleh. Tabbouleh is a very, very famous Middle Eastern salad, specifically from Lebanon. It contains cracked wheat, cucumbers, tomatoes, lots and lots of lemon and beautiful herbs and spices. It's a classic dish and it's a must when you're preparing a Middle Eastern meal. Let me show you some of the very interesting ingredients for this very, very delicious salad. We've got 9 ounces, about 250 grams of fine bulgur wheat. More about that in a few moments. 3 cups of very nicely, finely chopped parsley here. We've got 3 tablespoons of fresh mint. Well, we're just about ready to finish chopping it up. Over here on our vegetable platter, we've got some continental cucumbers. These are the Middle Eastern variety of cucumbers. When a recipe in Middle East calls for cucumbers, this is what we use. We're going to chop these up into little cubes and get about 1 cup's worth out of them. A couple of medium-sized tomatoes. These are going to be diced. By the way, here's our continental parsley that we use to chop up. Sometimes it's known as Italian parsley. It looks a bit like Chervil. This is a type of parsley that we're going to use for this dish today. I've chopped a lot up already, but I thought I'd bring some in to show you what it looks like. If you can't get a hold of that, the regular parsley will do. Over here on our large platter, we have half a teaspoon of yellow asafoetida powder, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of coarsely chopped ground black pepper, 2 teaspoons of sumac, a very interesting ingredient. I'll tell you more about that later too. Half a cup of nice virgin olive oil and half a cup of fresh lemon juice to give our tabbouleh salad its traditional lemon tang. Now, a word about cracked wheat, or bulgur as it's called. This is crushed, parboiled wheat kernels. Sometimes also goes by the name of burgle. It has a very, very chewy, nutty flavour, and it's very, very rich in iron and protein. It's the basis of today's salad. So the first thing we're going to do is to dump our bulgur wheat, the names are interchangeable, in our bowl here, and we're going to take it over to the sink to soak it in water, like so. So this is warm water. Some people use cold water, some people use hot water. Some people soak it for half an hour, some people soak it for 1 hour. There's a lot of individuality with tabbouleh. In fact, you'll go to any particular household in Lebanon and they'll have their own particular different style. Some people say it's got to have more parsley, more lemon, less soaking, more soaking. It's very individual. Anyway, this is my recipe, so I'm sharing it with you now. I'm going to soak this for about 1 hour in warm water. So I'm going to pop this over here. I do have a bowl that I soaked previously. It's just under the bench here. This was soaked for the right amount of time. Have a close look here and see the difference. This is all swollen up. The little grains of wheat are all puffy and it's nice and soft, although it does retain its chewy texture. So there's a bit of a time lapse there. We've got our before and our after. Let's take our after over to the sink and squeeze out every drop of water. This is very important. Before we add the rest of our ingredients, I've got a little cheesecloth here sitting in a sieve, and we're going to use the facility of our cheesecloth to pick it up into a little bag-shaped object here and squeeze out all this water. This is very important. This makes or breaks a tabbouleh salad. If you don't get all that water out, then you end up with a very, very soggy mess. This is very important. It's a great way of letting out your inhibitions or whatever. Right. Okay, let's pop it down on the bench here. What we're going to do now is open up our cloth like so, spread it all out, and let it dry a little bit, like so, just to get any remaining moisture out of it. Let's scrape all this off, rinse my hands off. And while we're letting it dry out, let's get back here to our other ingredients. For a start, I'm going to chop up the rest of my mint. Now, despite the fact that there are so many differences between different types of tabboulehs, because as I mentioned before, I've studied a lot of books and looked at a lot of recipes of tabboulehs. I've spoken to a lot of Lebanese mothers and all sorts of things like that, and I've tasted lots of tabboulehs. Even though there are variations, there's a few things that all tabboulehs have in common. They always contain nice, fresh, chopped mint. They always contain a very large quantity of parsley. When you saw the quantity of parsley there, you might have gasped. It took me a little while to chop it all up. Lots and lots of parsley, a nice quantity of fresh mint to give it that lovely minty flavour, and most important, a very large quantity of lemon juice. Or at least it should be very, very sour. In fact, when this is served on a traditional Middle Eastern table, there's the tabbouleh salad is there, and on the side there's a little jug with lemon juice mixed with salt. Some people like it even more lemony and they add some extra. There's also a very important ingredient that I pointed out before that I said I was going to get back to, and this is it. It's called sumac. This is an ingredient which is used a lot in Middle Eastern salads. Not always in tabbouleh, but I've popped it in this salad just because it's very, very delicious. Let's have a look at our burger wheat over here, shall we? Bulgur wheat, burger wheat, bit of a tongue twister. Notice how it's all dried out. It's completely soft and completely dry. Very, very wonderful texture for tabbouleh. Let's lift it up and pop it into our big bowl here, shall we? Bring it over to our big bowl. Let's dump it in. Shake off all those lovely grains of wheat. Bring our bowl over here. Now, here's our cucumber and our tomato. Let's pop that over here. We're not going to add that yet, although it's all happening pretty fast here. Let's add everything else. We've got our mint leaves, like so. We've got our nice sumac, lovely sour and beautifully coloured powder. We've got our black pepper powder here. Our salt, yellow asafoetida powder. This is definitely my little addition to tabbouleh. Lovely virgin olive oil, lovely. Lots of lemon juice. This is actually quite conservative. Some people put even more in. That's a good reason why you have to drain your tabbouleh well, because there's all that lemon going in. And here comes loads and loads of lovely parsley. Look at that. It's practically drowned out everything else underneath it. Let's mix it all in now. I think my hands are going to be the most practical tool here. You have to sort of spin it around like this and get it all mixed in. There we are, just about done. Now let's add our final little touches here, our cucumber and our tomato. Now we have to fold this in very carefully. We don't want to crush up all those tomatoes. Notice how I've cut the tomatoes and the cucumbers very fine. That's very important. They shouldn't overpower the little bulgur wheats. Everything should be nice and balanced. Well, I think that's looking beautiful. Just going to wipe my hands down a bit here. In the fridge I have a lovely platter with a serving suggestion. Let me get it for you. Here we are. Put this over here. A bit of rearranging. It's always nice to serve tabbouleh in a beautiful bed of lettuce, and have little lettuce leaves on the side to pass around. Nice little dainty ones, aren't they cute? We've got to pass these around for the guests to scoop up the tabbouleh and pop it in. And on the side we've got a little bowl of lemon juice with salt added. They can pour on their own as they need it. Let's grab a spoon here. Where are we? Oh, a lovely spoon. Let's pile it all on for the guests. This is a really, really popular salad. People eat this by the bowlful. It's very, very filling too. There we go. Pile it all up. Ooh. Lovely. I can't fit much more than that on there. Why not? Just pop another one on for luck. So there we are, tabbouleh salad with a little lettuce leaves on the side and some lovely lemon juice with salt to pour on as an extra. There it is, another delicious Middle Eastern entree, tabbouleh. Well, I hope you enjoy preparing these dishes as much as I've enjoyed sharing them with you. Happy and healthy eating.